Okay, Zoomers. Hey guys, how's it going? We're back at it again.
Back at it.
Okay, what is going on, Rob? This is a crazy time. Holy cow.
True.
But that's, I think, a good segue to talk about what we need to be talking about today, which is what are we doing with social media and all this stuff going on with rioting? The Rona is still here, but it somehow took backstage. A worldwide pandemic took backstage.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think for good reason. So let's start talking about how we can use our social media to glorify God and talk about things in a mature manner and stuff like that. So kind of, can you give some more detail on like stuff that you're seeing with all this stuff going on?
Yeah, I mean, our generation has a unique opportunity that generations before them have not had, where in a situation like this, we can say things and write things that then become like public and widespread and accessible to anyone. And it's such a powerful tool for being able to share our voice. But it's also such a dangerous tool if we don't know what we're doing or if we're careless and that kind of stuff. And I think as believers, we have absolutely a special responsibility, and that includes how we handle social media. And so it's worth talking about it because it's one other aspect of our life that needs to fall under the umbrella of the lordship of Jesus, right? And how we live. So
yeah, I think ultimately, like, we're seeing something that is a new thing, but in an old way. Like, we're still having to steward, we're still having to watch what we're saying and stuff to glorify God, but it's definitely different. Like, if I want to post about my food, I can do that.
You can do that. If you want to post about a super important issue in our world right now that's like front stage, center stage, and should be, and affects the lives of millions and millions and millions of people. In fact, it touches the lives of everyone in some way.
Yeah.
Right? You can say that too. And so it's like this total range of, you can say something as like meaningless as what you did, like had for dinner last night, or you can talk about one of the most important topics that you could be talking about.
Yeah.
And so it's like
it's a big stage.
There's so much potential. Yeah, it's a huge stage and so much potential. And so how do we shepherd that opportunity well? Does God care about the things that we put on our social media? I think that's the question we start with. Does God care about what we put on our social media?
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
But why do we let's hop into some verses and like figure out why God cares, or like what we are given as responsibilities or commissions from Scripture. So
yeah, I think Colossians 4, verses 5 and 6 is a great place to start when we're thinking about this. Walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. It's like just this general, right? And I think it's safe to say that we can relate the activity we have on social media to what Scripture is talking about here when it says speech. And I think we can easily draw a parallel between those, that our speech always needs to be gracious. But what does seasoned with salt mean? How does that like interact with that?
Well, I guess the question back to you is, what does salt have? Like, what connotation does salt usually have in Scripture?
Flavor. Oh, in Scripture.
Well, no, that too. Like, I think we're just a verse or like a thing that comes to mind when you think salt and the Scripture.
Be salt and light.
Yeah, salty and lit.
Salty and lit.
No, but like, it's Jesus. Like, he's talking that parable, and he's saying like, you're supposed to be salt and light. Salt that is keeping its saltiness in its fact that it preserves.
Yeah.
And so when in Scripture, like when it says like be salt to the earth, it's this portion of stuff that what you're saying is true. It's preserving and a gracious word that is going to be life to you. And like, to put that in a little bit more understandable context is, if I know that there's some danger in something and I tell you to save you, like, that truth is salt to you. Okay. Because it is giving.
And sometimes it's like a little bit abrasive if it's like not what you were wanting to hear. Or it's maybe what you needed to hear, but not what you wanted. It can feel like, ooh, it's like a salt scrub.
Yeah.
No, is that a thing? Maybe those are sugar scrubs. I might have
like
wrong.
a Epsom salt bath.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
like that.
I'm tracking. honestly.
So gracious, seasoned with salt. So our speech needs to be true, and it needs to like be true in ways that sometimes people don't want to hear, but true, and yet so gracious always.
Yeah, and I think
those two things.
I think personally, like what I find in this verse too is like the walk in wisdom toward outsiders, like with the assumption that they're looking at you, man. Like if you say you're a Christian, especially today, like then too, but also like I just think it's so relevant for today. Like you're putting a target on your back. Like people are looking at you and saying,
absolutely.
All right, like let's just see this God that's in the headlines and the news and everything. Like that God has a lot that people have problems with him because people like to live lives that are not holy or anything like that. And so you're instantly putting on display, what is Christ like?
Yeah, that's the biggest weight that is so hard to carry, is that like it's not just your image and your responsibility anymore when you say I'm a believer and then you enter the public sphere, because now you represent Christ in everything that you say and everything that you do. And that's a big deal, because if somebody looks at you and they see an image of Jesus that like isn't what Scripture depicts, isn't a true image of Jesus, then you've just given that person a false like idea of who Jesus is, and maybe you might have pushed them away from a relationship with Jesus. That's a heavy weight to carry.
Yeah,
our
real.
Words really, really matter. And so on this social sphere, when it says walk in wisdom towards outsiders, I mean that those words are going to everyone, to be seen by everyone and anyone. And so there are absolutely people, like you said, looking in with wondering eyes, saying like, okay, you claim to be a Christian, you claim to love Jesus, so what does that look like? And some people, all they can see is your social media posts.
Yeah, for real. Or like that's their only current thing. And like most people are like if you're saying like, oh yeah, I go to church and stuff, I'm so much better than you. And like then you're posting pictures on your social of like you going to parties or stuff like that. You're like, oh yeah, I love Jesus. Like I live a really perfect life, like nothing. But then like your social media is surrounded with like everything that just like is clearly like incongruent with the what you're saying. Like that's another thing where you're like contradicting yourself, and people see it and they're just like, well, that's fake and that's dumb. So specifically, how can we talk about like stuff like what's going on right now, like the Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, like
racial
I'm seeing
tension.
So much stuff, like everyone has an opinion and they're sharing it.
Yeah.
And so like what are some guidelines that we can form from Scripture, wisdom that we can pull?
Absolutely. Well, we're in this series that we're talking about right now, The Story of Us, over Riot for the next few weeks. We're going to set the foundation so that we make sure that we're all starting on at least the same page, where we can truly affirm that everyone is equal in the eyes of God, has the like incredible value given to us just because we are made in the image of God. We're created with like care. We are his handiwork. And we have to start with that framework, because if you don't agree with that, then we're not. It's racism. That idea of one being better than another is anti-gospel. Yeah. It's like against the very nature of the gospel. And so we have to start there. And that's what we're going through and learning at Riot. But then if you want to take that into the public sphere and make comments about it, then we have to figure out what are some of those guidelines and some of those things. And you mentioned this in our conversation earlier, and so I can start this portion. But people get really fired up about, well, how can you say, like, by this Black Lives Matter movement, aren't you just like raising them then now above everybody else, and isn't that causing such a problem? But I loved how you put it. It's like when a house is on fire, right? No one is gonna blame you for wanting to bring attention to a house that's on fire versus your neighbor's house who's fine. Yeah. Like, yes, those are probably two equally valuable houses and that kind of thing, but one is burning and the other is not. And so the reality is there's a problem that we need to talk about, and then we need to bring into the light, and then we need to work towards a solution. And I mean, we will be the first to admit that we are two white males who have no qualification or understanding to be able to have those kinds of conversations. But we can admit that there is a problem. We need to work towards it. We need to be part of the solution and that kind of thing. And so first you just got to take away that idea that we just need to say all lives matter, because right now that's just not helpful. Our
No.
house isn't on fire.
No, like it isn't. Like I'm chilling.
Yeah.
But there are people who are like, there's injustice going on, and whatever, like whether you're left, right, or middle, like the whole thing is like there is a problem. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening.
Right.
And so there are people who are hurt, and like the last thing they need to be told is, "Oh yeah, like I hear you, but this is what you need to think." And like we don't need, like, I hate to say it, but like we don't need to be always giving an answer. Like
Right.
sometimes with this stuff, it's like, all right, my answer shouldn't be all lives matter to when somebody says Black Lives Matter. Like I think that's ignorant, and Scripture says, like, I'm not pulling this from my own opinion.
Yeah.
This is Scripture. It says, I'll actually find it real quick. Okay, wow. Okay, so Proverbs 18:2. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his own opinion. And so in any sort of disagreement, like just a good conflict kind of verse right here.
Yeah.
If I'm coming to you and the only thing I want to do is say stuff, like forget the relationship, dude.
Yeah,
Like
it's not helpful. Our posture, our stance needs to be listening and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Listening and understanding. And I personally have not had an answer, have not had anything, like, just because I want to just do more listening and more understanding before I ever think that I could have a voice that's helpful. And so, man, we serve a God who is so gracious and so loving and so merciful, but yet he does not let injustice go unpunished.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental part of his character. And so we can like proclaim that both of those are true in terms of the character of God, and both of those things have an influence on the current situation and anything that we deal with as humans, right? Is that there is an unbelievable amount, an endless amount of grace and forgiveness given by Jesus when we put our trust in him and our lives are turned. But injustice has penalties, and God hates injustice. God hates injustice. And we look towards the day in the future when everything is made right?
Mm-hmm.
When Jesus comes back and everything is made right. But until then, it's our responsibility for the kingdom to come here as it is in heaven, right? And so we're part of it.
Yeah.
We're part of it.
Like we're the answer. We're plan B for up until Christ comes back. So I guess something that like sticks out to me, like that understanding piece is crucial. I think that'd be like, if you want to like take a note or list down like some guidelines, like be first to understand the problem in as much clarity as you can.
Yeah.
Like you can never, when people are offended or hurt or feel like there's injustice, you can never listen too much.
Yeah.
Like you might, and that's the lie that like our culture like buys into, is like, I have to be the one commanding the situation. Like I have to silence everyone else. Like that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
just listen.
Just listen. And then it says the fool gives full vent to all their heart and their mind and stuff. And so realizing that you need to be first to listen.
Yep.
And good at it, not just doing it to get to your point.
Yep.
I think like a second point too is just looking at like how God has reacted when wronged.
Yeah.
Thinking about Christ when he went to the cross. Peter in 1 Peter 2:23, he said, when he was reviled, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly. And you were like skipping on that point, but like Christ endured so much.
Right.
He endured every sin in the entire world for our sakes when he was completely innocent. If there is any injustice we could ever point to, it's the fact that a loving God put his own son, who was innocent and perfect, on the cross and judged him for all of the sin in the entire world for us who are completely unjust. So just start there. Like there's been an intense injustice. Yeah, there's been an intense injustice in the cross.
Mm-hmm.
But it's for our benefit. And so we have to realize that God is willing and able to correct some of those.
Absolutely. I think we should end it here. Proverbs 15. verses 1 and 2 says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouths of fools pour out folly. We're going to be people of wisdom, and we're going to be people of grace with a soft answer that turns away wrath. And we're not going to stand for injustice, but we're going to walk in wisdom towards outsiders and everything that we've mentioned, like you were saying, because this is so tricky. This is so tricky. But you're not alone, and you have the power of the Spirit living inside of you who empowers you. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're really thankful, even in this season, to have a community that looks different but is still there, hanging on to one another. So let's hit it. Okay, Zoomers.
I've been on the way now. We've been on the stage in a playground. Not enough change on the way.